Welcome to The Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom, a podcast by The Lavish Group. We are a community of powerful leaders and creators. Each one of us is on a different path and from a different background, but we all embody aspects of what it means to truly live a lavish life. And we are here to share our stories. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Martin. Today, I have a wonderful guest that I'm so excited for today. I have Mr. Oren Harris, or as I call him, O. Oren is just an absolutely amazing person. And I know a lot of podcast hosts say that about every person that they interview, but Oren is someone who is a little bit harder to define. He is such a manifestation of the uniqueness of the divine that it's fascinating. It's just so fascinating. Oren is not only a coach and a poet and a lover of life, but Oren is an oracle, a connector, a channel, and he specializes in the power of flow, which is something that I think that so many people are after, so few actually experience. And once you do experience, it's like, I got to have more of that. And I'm quoting him as he says, "My mission is to awaken you to the God within and actualize your potential while living a life of contribution, fulfillment, and divine inspiration." And I think that's a wonderful synopsis of who he is. He is a light. He is someone I'm just so excited to talk to because I know it's going to be absolutely lavish. It's going to be absolutely divine. So welcome, Oren.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
You are so welcome. Well, I have been thinking so much about what topics we could talk about today. And you are such a wealth of knowledge. And looking at the things that you say on your website about, you say, feel limitless in your potential, connected to your genius, and fearless in life. And I think that that sounds so wonderful. And I think what's even more potent about you and what you do is that at the very core of it is this devotion to source. There's a devotion to love. And if there was one word I could use to describe you, it would be love. And it is really, I think, the difference between giving love, being someone who gives love, and someone who actually is love. And I think that that is a whole nother level of mastery, which you are embodying quite well. So I would love today to start things off for you to tell us about yourself and tell us how it is that you came to be who you are today. Were you born this way, or did you come to it through different life experiences, the discovery and expression of your gifts and all of that? I'd love to have a context to know you in.
So, yes, I was born this way, and no, I was not born this way. I think we all come into this world wide-eyed, innocent, connected to source in a sense, but life happens and we grow and we develop. And so I had, like many people, have had my own catalyst for awakening and for self-discovery and discovering of my gifts and all of the things I'm doing today, both stimulated by really challenging events, which are a great catalyst for transformation, as well as just things that I was inspired towards. So I have had many significant moments of a complete disruption of my life and myself, or who I knew myself to be, which is like on a level of like death, rebirth. And there's several key moments in my life, but one was in a relationship that was going really well. I was in love with this woman. Her family didn't know about us because they were racist essentially, but we kept falling deeper in love. We're like, we're gonna have to come out and tell them. Anyway, so that was already a strain on our relationship, but the relationship was amazing. And then just as we were coming out the closet and empowering ourselves and ready to go forth and be like, hey, we're in love, everybody deal with it, ideally support us, her dad passed away. And it was really, really heartbreaking and hard on her family and hard on her. Her dad was her best friend. And so that then delayed this whole coming out announcement party thing because there's like no way to bring that when the family's in tremendous grief. And so that kind of indirectly put a strain on our relationship. And then amidst all of that, she got pregnant. And so then that was just like the like intensity on top of intensity on top of intensity. Because long story short, she's like, there's no way I can bring a child into this world amidst all of this with our relationship, the race thing, and the death in the family. And so I don't have any children, so we didn't have the child. And that just like intensified things. And so it became the catalyst for a kind of spontaneous awakening, just due to the strong desire to uh, make things beautiful and normal again and just feel an sense of empowerment, a strong desire combined with a strong inability to do so. And so it was like this like collision of energy that really catalyzed I wouldn't even say it was a voluntary surrender. It just like snapped something in my soul. And that and I'm saying some of this intelligently in hindsight because at the time it's not like I read this in a book or anything like that. It just sparked an awakening, and I started to be able to see myself from other dimensions. Meaning, like, I was like, oh, there's me in the relationship that's having these challenges. And then there's me who's looking at me in the relationship. And so all of this clarity and insight amidst this difficult time was just rushing into my consciousness. And I understood things. I just started understanding things about myself, about human nature, about the mind, about like me. What was this character called me? So the incredible challenge and difficulty in this relationship at this period in my life catalyzed this spontaneous awakening. And I started just knowing things that I hadn't read, understanding things about myself and about the nature of the mind and identity and what it means to be human and all of these different things just started rushing into my awareness and had me start rethinking everything that I thought was true about myself or about the world. And then I started inspecting my beliefs and I was like, what is a belief and why do I believe what I believe? And did I just absorb or adopt certain beliefs? And then I attracted this book called How to Believe in Nothing. So I started seeking knowledge. Knowledge was rushing into me faster than I could keep up with. But then it also sparked me to seek knowledge and to even understand like what is happening. Even though I intimately understood, I had no real words. And so this book, How to Believe in Nothing and Set Yourself Free, I read like maybe 3 pages of it. But in essence, what I got from it was our beliefs pacify us with the illusion of security, and they're not the truth. And so then I was like, what do I believe and why do I believe it? And I did this whole excavation of my belief system because I recognize that who and what am I prior to all these beliefs and before I like reinstall. And so that was a very disorienting, scary, but liberating process because like to release a belief is almost like to release a part of who you are or who you think you are. And so that was a significant marker in that period. And then at the same time, I attracted or stumbled onto the book, The Power of Now. And when Eckhart Tolle was describing his awakening on the park bench, I was like, oh, that's the same thing that happened to me. And so the book just like instantly made sense to me because I was like, oh, that's exactly, I could have written the book. And so that was refreshing to me to see, oh, there's someone else that this happened to in a different way. And so as I started on this conscious path of spiritual development and expansion, then I just reviewed every single thing in my life that I was doing. And at the time, I was teaching and coaching, which is the only job that I had. And I imagined myself at the end of my life, reflecting back on my life and being in regret of not having said or done certain things. And I was like, that was painful, but it inspired me to take a leap of faith to stop a career that was going incredibly well and take a leap of faith and at least try to do certain things that I was interested in. And so then I got into acting. I've had a creative side to me growing up and in entertainment. And I didn't want to be a starving artist. So I wound up starting a business and became an entrepreneur. Fast forward this whole time, like I'm in this experiment, discovery, recreation of myself that was catalyzed by this awakening. And I started doing really well in my business. And then I had another revelation. And that then led me into speaking and coaching and empowering people's lives. And that revelation came by way of having a conversation with a coach, actually, which is recommended from a woman who was a really successful entrepreneur that gave me some great advice for my business. And I went and had a session with this coach and I had a revelation about myself. And I started asking questions again, like, okay, I've got my own business now. I'm acting, things are going really good. But what am I really here for? Why am I here? Who am I and why am I here? And what is it that only this soul can do? I want to know what that is. And then I had the revelation that I've always been like this coach guy. People have always been drawn to me naturally for guidance of some sort throughout every period of my life. Insert the whole why thing, I credit to my mom. She's an angel. She never killed my curiosity. So I never lost my ability to ask great questions and critical questions at critical points in my life. Like, what do I really want to do? Why am I here? And so I realized that this coaching thing was something in my essence. It was a clue and it followed me around. So I literally decided, I was like, I'm going to do that. That's how I got into coaching. And then that started going pretty well. And then I interviewed or felt like an interview. I had a conversation with a really successful coach, two of them. One of them was my friend. And they both said, if you're a great speaker, that's a great way to build your coaching practice. And so then I went to Toastmasters, public speaking organization. They teach you how to speak. I wrote my first speech out. I'm pacing around in my apartment like a crazy person, doing these inflections and tonalities, just a hot mess, really. And I was like nervous and I wasn't even on stage yet. And I genuinely was like, you know what? I don't know about this speaking thing, but I signed up to do my first speech, my icebreaker. I'm going to get it over with. And I went into that speech, and this is in hindsight too, but something inside me was like, you know what? I'm not going to try to do a good talk. I'm not going to try to get the uhs, don't say, the inflect. I'm not going to speak my heart, be myself, get it over with, and move on with this coaching thing. And I went in there with that intention, stood up on the stage, started to talk. Who am I? If you would have asked me a couple years ago, I'd have said, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, I'm a this, I'm a that. But is that really who I am? And I do this talk. It was timeless. I got a standing ovation. And I got all of these amazing compliments from people written on feedback slips. Amazing, made me cry, inspiring, moving, best icebreaker I've ever heard. you reminded me of Martin Luther King. So my mind's in this surreal state. My being was like, this is just feels right. It feels true. But my mind was like, this is real. I was the guy pacing around my apartment, like looking like a crazy person. And now everybody's looking at me like I'm a genius. So at the end of the talk, people were coming up to me and saying nice words, telling me their experience, but they were looking at me like what looked like they were trying to understand something. They were trying to express. They were like, thank you. Like the feeling was like, what happened here? What's happening? What are you? Who are you? What is it I'm feeling? Something significant just happened. And so they were just like, thank you. And over the next couple of days, I really reflected on that. And I was curious. I was like, number one, why, when I said F it, did this genius come through me? And two, what were these people trying to tell me? Do you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that was the next revelation. And I was like, okay, well, clearly I can speak. So I'm going to do that. I am that. I recognize I already was that. And so that's how I got into speaking. And I realized that everybody just wants to be themselves at the end of the day and feel good about it. And ideally have people that know who they are and receive them. And I'm like, my heart, because I was in my heart, I spoke to their hearts because I was connected to my soul and I surrendered to the moment and allowed my truth to move through me. My spirit spoke to their spirit. And I'm like, that's what, it wasn't the words, it wasn't the content, it wasn't my ability to articulate well and string sentences and ideas together so much as it was where I was speaking from. And I realized it was a revelation, just like the coaching. I'm like, whatever that is, for whatever reason, I am that. So when I spoke it into form and said, I am a speaker, I started off world class. Not like I was around the world, but like in my being, I recognized that I don't have to try to speak. And so that's how I started speaking. And fast forward, the rest, as they say, is history. So
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. You said so much there that I think is valuable and to resonate with so many people. And you're talking about like super high level communication, right? Like it's not about the words that you say. It's not about the intonation, the inflections, the body language. It is like where it's coming from and where you're speaking to. And that is, again, a mastery that few have when they're speaking to someone, whether it's on a stage or whether it's one on one with someone. We're oftentimes speaking at people, right? And so that connection that we're all like desiring to have is available at our fingertips. And I think that's like when you say that when people came up to you afterwards and they were like trying to figure out who are you, what just happened here? It's almost like there's some sort of faint recognition of something that they once knew, right? And they're not quite sure if it's the real deal here. Like what? And yet there's also the knowing. And I think that as you were saying that, I was like, I'm pretty sure that I experienced that the first time that I met you. I was like, who is this guy? And what is he all about? And the more time that I spent around you and the more opportunities I've had to speak with you and converse with you and commune with you, I have something just so deep sinks in about not just the authenticity, but the like truth of who you are. It's so genuine. And I don't mean that in flattery. I mean that in complete honesty. So you came to this through hard times and a complete I won't say overhaul, but maybe it was an overhaul of like looking at what is a belief? What do I believe? Why do I believe that? Do I want to believe that still? And I think that so many people, I'm thinking about particularly people that would be listening to this podcast, these high level women. A lot of us may have already come to that place where we've re-examined our beliefs. And I know for myself, that was part of my awakening too, having been raised in a very conservative Christian household and having what I should believe and what I should not believe just like drilled in me with the fear of God, fear of the wrath of God. And then having to be like, I'm pretty sure that that is not the God that my soul knows. And then over my own hard things, having to let go of somewhat really big identities. And I think that for a lot of people that get to a place where their soul is pulling for some sort of transformation, one of the hardest things can be the letting go of the belief, the letting go of the identities. And those are like an onion, right? Like you think you let go of one and there's another one, right? And so I would love to talk about love and letting go. And I don't mean love in the romantic sense. We talk about these principles of loving the self with the capital S and this soul pull for transformation and letting go of control and all of these aspects. You have, and I will just say, you have one of the most beautiful Instagram threads. It's so inspiring. And it's so relevant and beautiful. And I actually have a post that you wrote about letting go that I would love to read. And then I would love to talk about this more. The first question, though, I would ask you before I get to that, though, is when we talk about this soul pull for transformation. So it's like there's something inside of us that, like, we know, like, on all outward appearances, we've got it all. And yet there's something inside of us that is saying, there's more, there's more. And maybe the ego side of us is saying, why can't you ever be satisfied? Or maybe we've been told our whole life, it's never good enough for you. You're too much. All of those type of messages. How does someone tune in to this or recognize it or listen to this? And what is that? And how does someone who is feeling it, like this insatiable thing, and it won't shut up and it won't leave them alone, how does someone tune into that? And how does someone recognize that it is something deeper in them and it's not just an ego thing that wants more?
Well, through exploration, observation, inquiry, implementation, reflection. And one of the things that really creates space and enhances that process is love, right? It's because the deeper we love ourselves and all aspects of ourselves, be they our true selves or not, but just aspects of our experience, then the more we come to know ourselves, and the more we, know ourselves, the more we can connect to our soul. And the more we can connect to our soul, the more we can connect to our soul's unique genius and our unique blueprint. And so love definitely plays a part in being able to hear, feel that connection and that resonance. And then also having the courage to act on whatever our personal truth is, whatever the impulse of spirit is inside of us. So knowing ourselves, loving ourselves, and knowing ourselves is part of that process. Because at the end of the day, as we come into connection with our soul, our unique genius, the divine impulse, our intuition, the the putting of that into action, or the difficulty in putting that into action, really comes down to the tension of like in human relationships, which brings love or the heart back in. And so I found that one of the bigger pieces of being able to act on, to be obedient to spirit and to fulfill your soul's legacy and to move in this authenticity and truth, is how safe we feel, honestly, in our own being, in our own body, in our own hearts. And so to the heart is like the gateway to our higher self. The heart is what allows the heavens to come to the earth. It's what allows that energy, whether you're looking at it abstractly, like just the radiance and luminosity of our being, or you look at it very specifically in terms of what we're expressing. When our heart's open, that circuit is open. All right. That's what allows it to move. So I found that that's been the biggest challenge, or it's one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle. And then the safety, even when we talk about like transition, if you're changing from one identity to another, one career to another, or you're just having this transformational process, one of the parts of transition that can be challenging, especially if we're in the void or in the unknown, or we're having an identity crisis, or we haven't landed in the embodiment and expression of the new expression yet, is just feeling unsafe.
Yeah.
Not feeling safe in not knowing, whether it's not knowing who we are, or not knowing how, or not knowing what to do. And I feel like that's a piece that pretty consistently gets overlooked, because we're trying to get to the clarity and the direction and trying to like move, or trying to move with the clarity that we do have. And so the heart being open and relaxed and safe is what allows the soul, and the spirit and the inspiration and the visions, therefore, and whatever we're bringing to the world, to keep flowing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
not the only piece of the puzzle, but I've noticed that it's the biggest piece of the puzzle, or one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle, first of all, and even getting in touch with that your home frequency and where that clarity and resonance exists. And then in being able to then, okay, now you're getting in touch with it. You're like, ooh, I know who I am. I know my soul. I know my gifts. Ooh, I'm getting downloads and then the action part of how much we'll be able to move with that impulse into the world. And it might be something consciously or subconsciously of like, what are people going to think of me? Or maybe it's, what are my family going to think of me? You know what I mean? Or what if people can't understand me? And it comes down to these things of fear of rejection, fear of judgment, which all fear, this is a revelation I had a few years ago. All fear is a fear of feeling. And that's good news. Not comfortable, but it's good news, because it's also showing the way through it. Because all fear is a fear of feeling, and feeling might feel like it's going to kill us, but it doesn't actually kill us. Our heart can hold it all. When we're not resisting feeling, we have an incredible superhero capacity to feel. Watch a baby, right? It's not what it's the resistance that makes it hard. And so when it comes to giving our gifts fully in the world, or even, I'm saying the same thing in different ways, allowing the divine to life to move through us unobstructed, then our capacity to feel plays a big part. And so if we fear rejection, then now we can go one of two pathways. We can like burn through that with our spirit, with our will, and with our heart, and keep moving, or we'll go into self-preservation and judgment and control, and then create this limiting identity, which is then just watering down our expression, for example. And then we start feeling tired and exhausted because we're resisting ourselves.
Yeah, no, but I love what you're saying. And I love how you brought it into this safety. You talked a lot about safety, but I also, one of the things that I thought really went well with this is the safety versus certainty. And I know you've talked about that in the past. I've read and listened to some of your stuff, but I think that fits here so well. And I would love it if you could touch on that and bring in some of that. What's the divine wisdom there in that safety versus certainty thing? Because I can say for myself, like when I decided to stop practicing medicine, that was not just, you can think of all of the things I might have been giving up financially and my colleagues. But the biggest thing for me was that I was so surprised by, because I felt like I had a little bit different understanding of myself. But I did go through a little bit of an identity crisis because I did not realize how much I was identified or how much of my own value I saw in myself as a doctor. And so it was safety versus certainty. And in addition to that, it was that loss of identity felt like a huge loss of control of myself. I did not know how to put myself back together. It was like Humpty Dumpty had fallen off a wall, and all of the aspects of my psyche and myself felt like Scrabble. Felt like I didn't know how to put that back together again. I eventually figured it out. But I think that there's the safety versus certainty thing is also a really big reason why so many people stay in situations, whether it's a relationship or it's a job or something that is soul sucking or toxic or just not in alignment with something that they know is their highest good. And I know for myself, like, even if I'm just talking about my career, I have been thinking about leaving medicine for a long time before I actually did it. And I did a lot of probably damage to myself mentally and physically, that toll of the stress of all of that, before I actually got to the point where the universe was like, you jump or we're going to kick you off the cliff.
Right. Yeah, I like the Humpty Dumpty analogy, and I can relate to it. And I think most people can. Identity crisis, trying to put yourself back together again. This is how safety versus certainty plays out in that is when you're going through any kind of transition, especially a big one, it could be like a death and rebirth, right? And so then the identity crisis, like part of the crisis of the identities, whatever you previously drew your certainty, your security, your safety, your sense of value, and your sense of worth from is no longer there. So you don't have that same power to draw upon or to associate yourself with. And so it's not like your power goes away, nor does your safety go away. But if you linked it to your identity, then it's like, but I don't know exactly who I am, or I'm not in that career or job anymore, that relationship anymore. And so you're in this transition. And one of the things that can happen in transition is if we start feeling overwhelmed or anxious or fearful, and at the same time, we're like inspired towards a new direction, right? And maybe you've already started receiving some clarity, or you have a vision, right? And you're trying to move forward with clarity. Here's where safety versus certainty comes into play, is that if in feeling overwhelmed or anxious or fearful, when that's going on in your system, whether it's in the background on a low level or in the foreground, and you're trying to seek safety unconsciously through certainty, through clarity. Clarity would be like, I have the new identity. I have the new job. Hallelujah. I've got my value, my work, my security, my power back. Whew, I'm good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's the practical parts of that and the relevant parts of like your vision and who you're becoming and what you're creating. But what I'm saying is, in that process, the alchemical process from the inside out of transitioning to another level of you, another level of being, and then maybe a new identity, that's a process, right? And there's certain things that you need. And yes, clarity is one part of the equation. That's the outward expression of the new you, right? But what I'm saying is that if your reaction to overwhelm is more clarity, that's like the or control.
Mm-hmm.
The ego tries to create through control. So the ego tries to create safety through control. And one of the ways that we control things that's very innocent, and we all do it, is knowledge, understanding, know-how. Like, I know how to accomplish what I want to accomplish. I know how to feel how I want to feel. I know how to do XYZ. And so there's nothing wrong with that on the practical level. But when we're going through a transition and beneath the overwhelm and the anxiety or whatever state we might be in, we're actually wanting to feel safe. That's a heart thing. We're wanting to feel held. We're wanting to know that we're okay exactly where we are and how we're feeling. And when you could really go deep into this, it comes down to our belief that we are separate from life, separate from source, right? So when we're in the unknown or in this shift of identity and we have less things, a knowledge of self to draw on, then what I'm saying is that if we are seeking more clarity or trying to speed up our process or trying to create a sense of safety through being able to control or understand things, then it doesn't work. So what does work is to tune in and be present with the part of us that is feeling unsafe in this in between, in the Humpty Dumpty phase, in the void. The part of us that's feeling unsafe and bringing an actual attention and presence to that part of us so we can love ourselves and we can let ourselves be loved. Because if we're so busy moving towards clarity and resolution and knowledge and knowing, we could easily overlook that one part. And I've worked with many, many highly capable people, high performers, that unknowingly, that's the part they're struggling with the most. There's a feeling that they're having deep in their heart in the in between, in the not knowing, or in the boredom, or in the, oh, I don't know what to do with myself right now. I'm usually doing all these activities, but and tending to the heart is important. And that's where the safety feeling, it's a feeling. What is it that allows us to actually deep exhale and relax? Yeah, it's not on that level. It's not us being able to more successfully control our reality, and it's not even certainty that creates that level. Of course, certainty and knowledge and power and know-how can generate feelings of power. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that sometimes that comes at the expense of this deep, nurturing, almost mother energy or father energy of just like, hey, I got you. You're okay. It's okay to be afraid. You know what? It's okay to not know. This is a big one for the high performer identity structure because a lot of us high performers became high performers out of adversity, out of challenge, out of difficulty. We build resourcefulness, we build resiliency, we build this energy of drive. And then there's the pure part of it, which is coming out of pure love, pure infinite abundance, and out of the field of source. And then there's the survival aspects of our drive. And for most high performers, that becomes part of the identity. So if you deconstruct the identity, then all of a sudden, right, it might be something as simple as, and I actually had this happen many times, but with one client I'm remembering in particular, is he was in a transition in his company. He was more on like putting out fires and problem solving on a very high level and like super stressed out. And he came to me because his wife convinced him to take time because he felt like he didn't have any time.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, that's exactly why you need to call Oren.
Yeah.
Hello. You're like, that's a problem. And so he called me. He starts sharing with me. I let him, he's like, this is what's happening. And this is what I want to happen. And I said, how do you feel? He's like, I'm just anxious, overwhelmed, I'm frustrated. And on the surface, it looked like he was really sharing with me just how he felt. But the thing is at the same time, he was still resisting his feeling through seeking knowledge and seeking resolution. And so it came down to a really what proved to be a miraculous moment. I just invited him to feel for a few minutes without the masculine aspect of problem solving and certainty, just feel the frustration. And when he did that, then I said, how do you feel? And he's like, so he was feeling more now. And then I said, how do you feel about the fact that you don't know what to do? Because he said, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, how do you feel about that? And then I felt some tears well up in his heart. There was like tears before they came out. And it turned out he was feeling shame. So this whole time, while he's moving towards clarity and certainty and resolution and creation, he's using part of his infinite power to manage the shame that's going on in the background. So he's not actually accessing all of his power, right? And so that was miraculous. It helped him release that. Boom, he gets an insight that solves the problem he's trying to solve for 2 months, and it happens in 10 minutes. And so then I helped his brain understand, right? Link it back into his value system of, hey, here's the value of taking time to feel and be with yourself, even amidst the chaos when the stakes are the highest. I linked it back to his brain. And I said, why do you think that insight just came? Where did it come from? How come it wasn't obvious to you before? And I linked it to the managing of the shame. And I'm using this as an example to tie this all together to say that for him, when he was a child, he got rewarded, got valued, and got loved for getting the good grades, for being the high performer, for knowing how to find the answer. So now here he is, a high-powered CEO. And yes, that's an asset, resourcefulness, capability, drive. It's like, yes, 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 yes. But the flip side of that, the downside of that particular asset, because part of it was born out of survival, like self-preservation, is that he's spending all this time just resisting. I don't know what to do. Right. So, and this was in his so him just saying, I don't know, and then moving that shame and coming into acceptance of it's okay to not know. You're not a bad person. You're not invaluable. That one moment changed his whole entire life. And that's an example, a very specific example of a transformation of identity happening on a core level. And part of the drive and the high powered CEO, he's a badass, but he was significantly limiting himself because this part of his identity was avoiding or managing shame. And so he liberated that energy back into his consciousness, had an insight come in, and now he's a more powerful CEO. And then he gets to integrate new behaviors. Maybe he's in a moment like that in the future, trying to help his team and his company. And he's just, I don't know, honest. And you're like, hey, I'm on it. And like, guys, I don't know exactly what to do, but I know we'll figure it out. So simple. That's intimacy. That's self-love. And you combine that with the drive that he already had, boom, he's a more powerful CEO right there.
Yeah. That story resonates with me personally. And I also see the way that, like, even working with patients and clients and all of that in myself, where that safety and certainty drive is being driven by something else, essentially, right? Like and so it is an awareness. What I hear you saying is that there has to become an awareness of the core driving force in that safety versus certainty in order to make that shift, that transformation. And it comes with feeling. It starts with, we're able to get to that deeper place by allowing ourselves the space to feel, the space and the time to be in the feeling, because those feelings have a lot of information for us. And
100%.
yeah, I hear so many people, and myself included, we all say, I don't want to feel this way, or I don't want to feel X, Y, and Z. And you were talking about all the time and energy that we spend resisting feeling. Like, we're very clear about what we do not want to feel, and we will run away from that. And it's also even kind of part of this like cancel culture, right? Like, you make me feel this way, you're out. Like, without actually looking at, why do I feel that way in the first place? Like, how is it that somebody else can make me feel that? Yes, it's beautiful. I love the answer to solving that safety question.
One thing I wanted to add to feeling is sometimes, and this is the case with this gentleman, sometimes we think we're feeling something, but we're not actually fully feeling it. And the miracle and the healing of feeling happens in its highest potency the moment we're fully feeling something. And that's like a lost art. It's almost like a superpower we had when we were children. And most of us forgot how to feel without agenda, which means without trying to change it, fix it, analyze it, extrapolate it. And if you can just do that for a hot second, just feel like your mind has no idea the power of this and might even think it's a waste of time. But if you can just completely feel, I'm like, if you're going to be frustrated, just be frustrated for a minute. Like, let yourself be frustrated. Then you can extrapolate insight, revelation, clarity, and direction.
Right. Well, I think part of that also comes with most people will, they make those negative emotions bad. Feeling frustrated is bad. It's something we don't want to feel. Feeling afraid is bad. That means something's wrong. Feeling sad, feeling grief, feeling angry, feeling unvaluable, like all of those things we don't want to feel, those are bad emotions and we don't want to feel them. Not even like I feel like I don't want to feel them, but like it's part of the way that we're raised in our culture that don't, like, if you feel those are negative, stay in the positive. So we will bypass the value of these harder emotions, I will just say. And I have to say for myself, like, just being able to say, oh, I'm afraid. And being able to say, like, is it okay that I'm afraid? Yes, it's okay that I'm afraid. Just like you said, that feeling is not going to kill me. Right. And that's one of the things I say is people are like, but I feel shame or I feel this. And like, is it okay that you feel that way? And that's a very deep question for a lot of people. They have to examine that a lot, but it's really good food for thought with that. Everything that you said. Thank you very much. I would love to read this post about letting go.
Yes.
For
I'd
you.
love to hear it. There's good medicine for me too.
Yes. So I'm going to start at the beginning. It says, one of my deepest prayers for you is that you realize and remember the deep trust, safety, and support that comes from knowing you aren't separate from life, God, nature, the deep nervous system relaxation, soul exhale we yearn for doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go of control, from surrender. This can be really scary, but it's ultimately necessary and is deeply linked to our destiny. Letting go is such an intangible, energetic, and I missed part of that. So it's this intangible, energetic thing. I'll do my best to give some practical examples of what surrender looks like in action. It looks like choosing intimacy over isolation or inauthenticity. It looks like being honest about your inner knowing and admitting you're afraid versus staying in the illusion of confusion. It looks like taking action on the inner impulse of spirit or call towards love, even if you are afraid. It looks like resting when your body calls for it and using your will towards rest, if need be, when your mind resists resting. Amen to that. It looks like letting go of your narrow view or insistence on how something needs to happen. It looks like saying sorry when your heart knows it's the right thing, even if your mind wants to be right. Surrender looks like acknowledging and letting yourself fully feel your desires. It looks like being quiet when you want to speak or speaking when you want to be quiet. Surrender, contrary to our mind's distorted view of it, is not passive. It's quite active. When you surrender, you change where you are acting from. You allow yourself to be moved by love, clarity, truth, honor, spirit. Every time you actually surrender versus thinking you are, the release of control, resistance, immediately allows for more flow, more giving and receiving. All of the support and things you are unconsciously blocking can show up. At the point of surrender, what the ego perceives as death, spirit knows as more life. You realize, I'm still alive and more than ever. It's poetry and it's truth.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I think that letting go is also one of the hardest things most people will ever do and will ever continue to try to do throughout their life.
I mean, when I look at letting go on a level of human evolution, it begs this question or this contemplation of what is the next iteration, right? You know, Homo sapien, Homo erectus, or Homo whatever. What's the next iteration, right? Because I feel like this letting go thing that is hitting us in our own ways individually as souls and collectively, it's like, where's this taking us? If you keep going down the surrender pathway and you're allowing more space for your soul and your intuition and the divine to essentially merge with you, do we become a new iteration of human, divine human, right? Is that more likened to a caterpillar to butterfly type of metamorphosis? And so I started looking at surrender this way years ago, and I'm like, okay, I'm at the cliff's edge again, and I consciously or unconsciously, willingly or accidentally trip, fall, or get pushed or forced into the abyss. And it's like leap, and the net appears. I'm okay. I'm not dead. Oh, my life's even better. And then get to this point where you start to willingly surrender, and the new life force, whether that comes in as vitality, clarity, insight, revelation, more manifestation, it's like, if that's a momentary event in one season of your life, this is how I started looking at it years ago. I was like, what would happen if this became more of my way of being? And now I'm not using my resources again to think I'm dying at the edge of the cliff of the unknown and taking a leap of faith. And now, and metaphorically, poetically speaking, eventually you realize you can fly. But then from a level of human evolution, that looks like an entire evolutionary shift, like on a more a phase shift, a stage shift, like divine human, even a shift of the ages. Is like we're doubling down on information replication, AI. Okay, I get it. We're in the information age and we're like betting on it all the way. And at the same time, what's after the information age? There was an industrial age, we're in the information age. And so I feel like surrender is playing a part in this, whether we engage it consciously or willingly, or we go kicking and screaming and get forced into it. Every time we arrive and have this kind of rebirth moment, this kind of whatever, however we experience it, something is happening deep inside of us that's restructuring even our DNA, I'm sure. Where's that taking us? That's something to contemplate. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole and philosophize about it, but it's taking us somewhere. And that is very curious to me. And I feel like we are collectively in a surrender experiment invitation, and the volume's getting turned up.
Yeah, I absolutely. And true, that's a huge, huge other subject if we want to talk about the collective. And it's a very pertinent subject if we talk about the microcosm of the macrocosm, right? What is the next for each of us, even here? Not just, okay, yes, we can talk about in this life, where if we know ourselves to be these eternal, immortal beings, but we're here in this human life right now. And for those of us that are at the point that there is a shift happening for us, or we know that we're being called to that, there's a pull for it. The letting go that is, I think, vitally required in order to make that shift for us is what the collective is made up of individuals, right? And that is the ripple effect. We're all one. We're all moving toward, the universe is always expanding. The consciousness is always expanding. And so the letting go is, sometimes we feel in letting go that like that means that there's a loss. And how do we reframe that? And we know, like, you and I know, like, the letting go is actually not, that there's a falling away. And we can talk about death, rebirth, or whatever. And that's been something that's talked about a lot in psychology. But if we talk about it more from a mystic, metaphysical, divine aspect, it's a falling into love. Letting go is you said it's merging, it's all of that. And so letting go, can you talk a little bit about the love and the letting go and that, like, a little deeper there?
Yeah, letting go, or even surrender. Another way to look at surrender is like, what are we surrendering to? I mean, it puts a little bit more tangibility to the idea. It's like, so if we're surrendering and letting go of control, control comes from the mind, the ego mind, that's in fear or lack or in separation. That's why it's trying to preserve itself. It's trying to gain power. It's trying not to die. All right. So if that's control, and then we let go of control, well, what are we letting go into? And this is where I say to love, or to the divine, or to our own intuition, any kind of coherent harmonic of energy is what we make ourselves available to, even if we don't try to, because it's like a beach ball. If you hold a beach ball underneath the water in a pool, you're using pressure. That would be control, right? And if you let go, the beach ball just shoots up out of the water. So this is why when we surrender, powerful things happen that we didn't expect. It's because now they're able to happen, which means they were trying to happen anyway. And so this is how I look at the flow of life, the flow of love, the flow of truth, the divine impulse. There's a flow there. There's a current there. And so when we let go, we're letting go into that. We're allowing that. And I think one of many places that love plays a big part of that process is, like we said, in the process of letting go, instead of going into defense and self-preservation when we don't feel safe, now we bring love in, and like, it's okay. Okay. You're allowed to be. It's okay. That's where love, one place that love comes in the letting go process. Then there's the active side of love. This is the intelligence of love. And this, when we surrender to love and surrender to spirit, then we merge with that intelligence. So then how it integrates, to put it into like even more practical pictures here, how it integrates now is it infiltrates our decision-making faculties. How we prioritize things, how are we making decisions, how are we weighing things in a practical life level. Once we surrender to that divine intelligence and the intelligence of love, then we get to be the beneficiary of that intelligence, of the beneficiary of the intelligence, of the clarity, of the power, of the supernatural nature of that intelligence, because it sees from a broader perspective than our linear. And that's when it could seem like luck. It could seem like magic when things are working out much better. And the other way I'll tie love into letting go is more on a level of like love, like what do we love to do, right? There's an aliveness in love, right? Your energy is liberated. And so then our true passions, that which makes us come alive, that which we love, there's more space in our life for those things, to give our attention to what is actively in our love. And in tying safety back into this, it's as we relax into this safety and build this other trust muscle, right? There's the trust muscle of like, oh, I trust the known, I trust the knowledge, also because we can control it, right? So the sense of security, safety, trust, and empowerment that comes from the known and from knowledge and intellect, what happens when we surrender, we start to build the same muscle in the unknown, right? As we release into love, release into spirit in the various ways that we're talking about, then now that the frequency of faith and trust and power is able to enter into our system and become part of us. And then you start to feel, this is how I feel. I feel the same level of certainty about the things I'm certain about, because like I know how to do it. It's knowledge. It's like, oh yeah, I know I'm gonna drive down the street and go get some apple juice. Great. I feel I have to do that. my higher self knowing and the knowing of the creator itself, because I have surrendered into that and I know I'm not separate from it, I also get to be the beneficiary of its knowledge. And so I feel like if I don't know, something in me knows. And that thing, that force, that energy has my back because I'm not separate from it. And so then you start to become it, right? You're either accessing it. One experience, this is like being in a flow state, like, ooh, I'm accessing it. And then there's other times where we're one with it. And that's like more like unity consciousness, right? And you're just moving in right action. You're moving in harmony. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good breakdown of abstract concepts.
Yeah. And I think also too, in that surrender, this is where, like, we're talking about access to divine intelligence and all of this, but like how this shows up is gifts. It shows up, and like the gifts, like the development or the discovery of gifts or the intuition is a huge one. That is,
Yeah.
for me, I feel like my intuition is rock solid. It is an absolute superpower, and it is my higher self. It's like my best friend. It's like, it literally, like, I point here because this is where I hear it all the time. And I think or there's so many other gifts that people have. And in that surrender, in that loving of ourselves so much that we surrender to the parts of ourselves that we may have not recognized, we may have shunned, we may have pushed aside or ignored, or it may be a whole brand new discovery, but so much is able to come in there. And when I talk about, there is so many different ways that divine intelligence, it could show up in a dream. It can show up in somebody else speaking it to you. It can show up in a stranger. Like, there's so many ways for these things come in. So I wanted to bring some tangibility to some of these other, maybe we talk about divine wisdom and divine intelligence, but for some people who may just be starting to explore some of these and have an experience, that I wanted to give a little bit of context at ways that might show up. And when I talk with what I do, I talk about living lavishly and truly, like, what that means, that love of self and the abundance, and using our voice and our self-expression and our intuition and all of the principles that are of that. Stepping into a full understanding and embodiment of a lavish life requires a letting go into actually something greater, and a discovery and an embodiment of all of our powers that is actually so empowering that it makes that letting go seem like, almost like, why wouldn't you do this? At least to me. But that's me on the other side of that. But I just wanted to add that part in there because there is this, for me, why I started doing what I'm doing now is this deeper understanding that I am, the reality of me is lavishness. And it is this entire thing that is infused with this ribbon of love, and all recognizing all of the parts that are something deeper that we awaken to, that it goes beyond not just the superficial and the material, it goes beyond the 3D world. And that's one of the things that I love, what we've been talking about today is, wow, there's just so much here. It's just gold. It's just gold. And I have so much more I would love to talk with you about. I would love to do another episode with you. I'm also wondering, as we close this out, you are an amazing poet, and you have shared some of your poetry with me and with us, that you put some things on Instagram. I don't have any particular one in mind, but I'm wondering if, to you, given what we've talked about, this space, this energy that we're in right now, is there something that comes up for you that you would share with us?
You need not fear the unknown, for in it lies your true home, your true zone. You are a unique facet of the divine. You're like the finest wine. In fact, you are ahead of your time. You are unique and sublime. The safety you seek lies deep in your heart. You are a living embodiment of God's expressed art. So relax and let go. Live in your inner know. Allow your soul's glow. Forgive fast. Love yourself. Be your own best friend. Live your life in the now as if it were the end, knowing that in your death, rebirth, you will transcend into the next stage of your mission. Listen to your intuition. You are a living magician. You are precious. You are worthy. You are loved, and you are love. So live life to the fullest. Live in the lavish. Let yourself be ravished by God. And you're awesome. Yeah.
I love it. That was beautiful. Thank you so, so much, Oren. I would love it if you would tell us where we can find you, what your website is, how we can follow your inspiration.
Yes. For those of you who are listening, that poem was written on the spot. So you probably got that, but thought I'd note that. So my website is orenharris.com. That's ORENHARRIS.com. On Instagram, I am at Oren Harris. And on Facebook, I am also Oren Harris. Those are the ways that you can get in touch with me on the social media spaces. And yes, thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
Thank you so, so much, Oren. You are amazing as well. I cannot sing your praises high enough. And I can't wait to have more conversations with you. And also, I would love to have a conversation with your beautiful partner, Chelsea, which is, she is also just beautiful. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. From now until the next time, live lavishly. Thank you. The Lavish Leader, Unveiling Wisdom is brought to you by Dr. Erin Martin and the Lavish Group. To find out more about Dr. Erin and how you can create and embody a lavish life for yourself, visit thelavishgroup.com. And don't forget to search for Lavish Leader in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at the Lavish Group, thanks for listening. And remember, you too can live a lavish life of fulfillment, beauty, and love.